Good afternoon, Jan.
Good afternoon or good morning at your side.
Yes, indeed.
How is life there?
Getting back to normal, which is a bit of a shame. I I kind of enjoyed the fog of um, not remembering everything that I was working on, and it's like, oh yeah, I got to get back into that responsibility.
You mean after the cruise?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it lasted a long
Like,
time,
yeah. Oh,
but
what 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 would you do without work?
yeah, that's true. I do enjoy what I do.
Holiday is nice
Yeah.
if it's something different from usual,
Mm-hmm.
but if you would be on holiday all the time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I read 5 books over the course of the cruise because we had so many sea days. I would just sit out on the balcony and read my Kindle. Um, and yeah, since coming back, I've joined a friend's book club, and we started a new book. And yeah, it's painfully slow reading at home. It's like only get an hour in, and it's like okay, now I have to do something else. Versus
mm,
just all day. It's like okay, a couple of days are going by. Next book, let's do that. But uh, but yeah, I'm enjoying this one. This one's called Hench. It's a story about a temp worker who decides to work for supervillains, and
mm,
yeah, then she gets caught up in this pretty interesting hero versus villain uh, storyline. It's kind of funny.
okay, it's not about TypeScript.
Nope, nope, nope,
I
none of
thought
that
I
craziness.
uh, no, because I saw this morning I got a message that Michael L. Perry released a new video course,
Yay!
TypeScript in combination with React.
Yep,
I
yep.
didn't have time, but I went to see fast what is in it, and it looks interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, it was pretty
Uh,
fun to put together. It took a lot
mm,
longer than anticipated.
mm,
When we first started talking about it, it was supposed to be out in December.
mhm.
But yeah, there were lots of things that happened during that time, and I had to get it pushed back. And then, the cruise, of course. But yeah, now it's finally in the catalog. So building React Native apps using TypeScript.
Mhm. Anyway, you made it very practical.
Uh-huh.
You said, okay, it's valid for the versions that you see on the screen, so you can update the course
Yeah.
by only updating the slides without recording.
Yes.
I
Yes.
say that's well done.
Uh huh. Yep, yep. Actually, that is a concept that Pluralsight came up with. We need to refresh courses, and let's see if we can do that as easily as possible. And in fact, now that .NET 7 is released, my previous course on Entity Framework, or EF Core 6, that needs a version bump. So I'll be going back into the slides this weekend. First of all, I'll be redoing or just updating the demos just to make sure that everything that I talk about still works. And then once I've verified, yep, this all works on .NET 7, then I'll update the version check slide on that one as well.
I should watch that course about entity framework. I never saw.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, do you have an opportunity to use Entity Framework?
Not in my software, uh, but now that I'm getting more and more in inside Link,
Mm-hmm.
uh, thanks
Hmm.
to Jinaga,
Yeah. Yeah.
I might start using it. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Funny thing is with Jinaga.net, I that was the first time that I built a query provider for Link, and then after the second or third refactoring or complete rewrite of it, um, I got to a point where I didn't actually need the query provider part. I just used the expression tree part. So it's like, oh, it's not as complicated as I thought it would be. All I have to do is walk the expression tree and then pretend that I'm evaluating it over here on the side, keep track of what's what, and then by the time I get to the end, it's like, okay, that's the complete um, projection of that particular part of the specification, and just Yeah. So it turned out a lot easier than it started.
Oh, actually, there is very little things are difficult in the world. It
Hmm.
just depends on what what you are doing all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, if but to know something really well, you have to work with it all the time and be fascinated by it.
Yes.
Um, but okay. Anyway, I'm still a
Hmm.
little bit struggling with that SQLite stuff, but I'm less struggling. It goes faster and faster, so it goes better. Um, it's still not finished,
Hmm.
but we are going in the right direction, and it goes better and better. Um,
Yeah. Last time
the
you mentioned that you had some questions that we couldn't get to. Did you resolve
let
those, or do we want to go through those?
let me see. Um, Jinaga data structures. It should be in there. Yeah, so the last one we did was about the .NET Interactive. Uh, so actually, you suggested me another one there. What was it called again? I have it here. It was something like curl, but a little bit different.
Right. Yes.
Uh,
Floral.
Floral.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. For fluent URL.
Okay. And that one is working nice. Um, so I
Excellent.
started writing my own class, which I put inside the .NET Interactive, and that worked. But if we can keep it
Hmm.
shorter and easier, why not? So the only thing I had to do was not use a JSON string, but just receive string
Hmm.
at the
Okay.
end.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I've
JSON
sent.
array turned it into um, a JDOM, I believe, or maybe
Mm,
a dynamic.
it,
But yeah, you're receiving it just as a raw string.
it throw an error,
Hmm.
so I didn't look further. I just used receive string, um, and that was working.
Hmm.
I've sent a copy to you by mail.
Oh, okay. All right.
Um,
Let's see what.
but if you want, I can just show it.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and do that.
Make that one a little bit smaller again. That window. Up, and then let's share it. That should be the right size. Then this one go live. Okay. So let's put this one away. So, and just is the other one. Um,
Oh,
is
okay.
that
I
why
think I
is this
see
one
from the
still?
mail why it gave you an error. Yeah. I hadn't considered that case. Yeah, a
Yeah.
projection does not necessarily have to be an array of JavaScript objects. And receive JSON array is expecting exactly that. So
Mm,
yeah, this particular case, it's an array of just a single value. So um, so yeah, that
right. It was this one. So I updated. Before I was just using a local commit
mhm.
because there were some problems with, or the latest was not in, I think. But now that you update it to Nugget to the latest version,
Yeah.
and then graph it's the same thing, and then here floral. So then using this floral, and then wait, we're gonna execute it because otherwise it's not gonna work. It's this one. Okay, that's going fine.
Hmm.
Then this one was the routine that I wrote myself, but so we don't need it anymore. It's really just a copy of that, of the source code of the previous one, which I adapted and I made it synchronous instead of async. Then this one is working fine.
Yeah.
Then this one, and he has a database connection. Okay. Then here, so that's the descriptive string. So this is just the old one. Here I can just do the query, via j.query.
Yep.
And here I am using that specification to descriptive string. I put in my airline date. So that I call it the native specification.
Okay.
But
yeah.
actually it's more than my native specification. It's native specification plus defining the facts.
Right. Yeah.
So here we have the facts based on the hash code. And then, so don't need this one. That was the one that I wrote. So this one. Why is he jumping? Yeah, okay. He still has some breakpoints here. He's jumping to the server.
Yeah,
I was working on that part. Okay. Now he got through. He jumped to the server because I had a breakpoint somewhere in the server routines. So if I run it again now, you see, it works fine. So you saw it was breaking in the server. That's because I was actually going through and to see what I should obtain in .NET.
Yeah.
But so I think this is a small thing, but it makes it much easier to debug and to go through it.
Excellent. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
The only thing you have to be careful, but I didn't put all this thing into source code yet. But last week I showed you. I just made a small routine to clean my database.
Yes.
From .NET Interactive.
Uh-huh.
You have to be really careful because if your server is running and you clean your database and you don't restart your server, Jinaga server, then the database and Jinaga server are not consistent anymore, and you get a lot of funny things. So you clean the database, you have to restart Jinaga server, which is not a problem. But anyway, I will document it here.
Okay. Yeah. It would. Because Jinaga server caches the type IDs and role IDs. And so then, if you start populating it with data again, you might get different IDs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that being a problem. Yeah, that's that's an interesting difference between the kind of architecture that we typically use and what Jinaga is going for here. Is that a Jinaga replicator is completely encapsulated. It's the runtime and the database, versus our typical architecture is you've got runtimes that are in one cluster, and then they're all pointing to another cluster that's the database, and so they can't assume that they are going to be one-to-one, and that they're that they could cache something indefinitely and know that it's not been changed out from under them.
Yeah, but it's not a problem at all. It's just when you are playing with it for development.
Yeah.
Then you have to think about it. But I think as a user, you will even not realize it.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to delete anything, and truncate definitely is a destructive operation. So
it's immutable. It's immutable.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. That one we handled. Query for. That one we handled also. That was with the field in Postman. Connect. Okay. From .NET. Because it must be something. It's a very strange question in my head, but I don't see the answer immediately where I have to set that. Jinaga.net. I want to connect it to the Jinaga server.
Yes. Yes. So
Where do I?
yeah. So when you do a
Is that
Jinaga.create.
only possible if you use Jinaga client?
Yes. Yeah. So Jinaga client, it has an overload that takes a lambda. So where in the code are you initializing your Jinaga client? It should be up toward the top.
Let me stop
Oh, actually,
sharing
yeah,
with this
I see the
one,
NuGet there.
and then I go to I see what you mean. No, for the development. I'm working in Visual Studio, not in Visual Studio Code.
Ah, okay.
So I have both running, one on a virtual machine and one direct. Let's see. Now, for example, from the testing. So if, for example, where is it here? So here I'm just doing a new Jinaga with a new local network here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for testing only. But if I change this one somewhere, would he connect to the server?
Yes, yes, it would. So trying to remember what that's called. It's probably HTTP network is probably the name of it. But yeah, it's a different implementation of iNetwork.
Okay. So
yeah, in fact, you can see the HTTP folder right there. That's where that implementation would be. So I think I called it HTTP network. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would take the base URL.
Just okay. But from here, no, that's not going to work. Yeah, because here I'm running on my main machine. The server is running on the virtual machine, and for the moment I don't have access to that one. Okay, so I should put that server on an IP address that is available. But so it just needs a URL here.
Yes.
Okay. And then it should work like a normal Jinaga client.
Yes, yes, indeed.
All right.
That's it. That's simple.
Try that out. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna make sure that I have a connection to my virtual machine and then try it out. Good. What else was there? Okay. Is project reference. Okay. In graphics, there was this reference.
Yes.
So that's graphics. Why is there a reference to unit test?
I think that is a leftover from a previous a previous version. I think that the memory store used to be just in Jinaga unit test, and I moved it to Jinaga, and it might be that the graph is renderer. Yeah, I think it went through the memory store and said, okay, I need to actually see the facts that are in there. Is that right? Maybe. But yeah, I think at this point it can be removed. I will make a note of that.
I'm going to try it out, but normally it should. Let's see whether just graphics rebuild it. Yeah, it rebuilds some without problems, so it should be okay.
Excellent.
Oh yeah. Render facts is returning ASCII code when you use special characters. Where did I encounter that one? Okay. Let's switch back to the virtual machine. This one, go live. Imagine that I would. Okay, so here I'm using flight.
Mm-hmm.
I use it flight and go. Yeah, give it a new name. Flight and go. Oh, no, not so. Why is he? Oh, I deleted that one. No. Oh, wait, he's not accepting. No, it was not there. No. It was not in the variable. It was, for example, that airline.
Mm-hmm.
Call it INA. Why is he not doing that? I have my types here. Oh, yeah, I see. I added here that. That's the problem.
Oh, okay, right.
You see? Here.
Okay. So yeah, GraphViz is not.
He gives you the Unicode.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, Jinaga GraphViz is probably escaping that on its side, so that the actual GraphViz specification is not going to choke on it, but it's probably over escaping. It might actually be using, I think it's probably using a JSON string escape function, which, yeah, I seem to recall that a lot of the JSON string escaping functions are very ambitious about what they escape because they don't know where you're going to be using that string. So it's like, okay, nothing except for these characters goes out. So, yeah, let's make
That's a few
of that.
weeks ago that I discovered it one, and then I thought, okay, let's have a look in the graphics source code. And then I saw that there are no unit tests for graphics, that you didn't make any unit tests.
That's not like me.
No?
Yeah,
I say, how did Michael test that?
Yeah, probably just yeah. Yeah, I think actually during that period I was just like we're just going to write it to a file, run graphviz.exe, uh, and see, or .exe, and see if it renders something. Okay, yep, ship it. Let's go. Um, yeah, yeah. So for this one, definitely I will have some unit tests around it to make sure that I escape the right things and not the wrong things.
So actually, if I understand well, you debugged it using .NET Interactive then in Visual Studio Code.
I probably didn't. Yeah, I probably had a slightly shorter loop where I debugged it using .exe, and then once that was working, then I said, okay, now um, let's get this working in VS Code. And I think the reason for that was that uh, .NET Interactive will cache the DLL, and I think actually it locks it and makes it difficult for you to rebuild out from underneath it and then tell it to load the new version. Yeah, that's right. I do remember hitting the reload window uh, pretty frequently during that period.
Now,
Yeah.
now I remember. Um, Last time I spoke to you about a function that I made. Where was it? Where I used graphics to show it in Edge in the browser.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. So in that way, from Visual Studio, we could use graphics.
Yeah.
And the way I came there was because I was looking for a way to use graphics from the code
Mm-hmm.
to be able to debug that. But so by the time I was there, I forgot what was the purpose. Okay. Uh, Actually, that way we can quite easily see where it goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and using Edge is only necessary because by default, GraphViz outputs SVG, but you could also tell it to output PNG, um, which I don't know may or may not be easier um, to bring up in real time.
Because you convert it to HTML, which includes an SVG, I
Yeah.
think. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So inside of Jinaga GraphViz, I give .exe the flag to output SVG because that works inside of .NET Interactive.
Yeah.
And it allows you to select the text just like you did there.
And now, let's see whether I can find the correct page. Yes, because these are old questions. Page 1. What should be this? This document.
Let me
You remember?
click on that there.
It,
Yeah.
it's the sequel. Actually, it's I can show it here. Documentation. Jinaga server documentation. No, why is it not here? Samples. I know this. No, this is .NET. It's in the other one. It's here. Go documentation.
Yeah, so is it SQL from specification? Is that the one that we were looking at there? Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I've got it up on the screen here.
it's about that one. Per sentence. So there are two ways to generate SQL. One is used to populate feeds,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is used to project the current state. The goals are different enough to warrant separate code paths. I never understood why and where these two code paths are.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So the why is that feeds are all about evidence, which includes more facts than you actually have projected. The
Result of the non-exist.
yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that kind of a scenario. So, yeah, so yeah, and then furthermore, they don't follow the projections of fields and hashes and facts. Instead, they only go down through projections that have child specifications, and that way it can produce more feeds. So it parses them differently, and it produces different SQL. They still have the same joins and I think the same parameters. So they have the same kind of starting points and fact types and role types. So there is some things in common, but as I was working on them, I found trying to keep one code base that does both things and just have it change its behavior in different situations was starting to get a little bit cumbersome. So I said, nope, let's just copy this wholesale and make it work over here, make it work over here. And at the end, I'll see if there's some stuff that I can bring back together. And as it turned out, there wasn't really very much that I could bring together and reuse.
So it's the second one here that you talk about in this document.
This one is about
the other one.
This one is about the the second one, current state. You're correct.
Yeah. And so the first one are then the algorithms that are used if you use what was it, j.feed, I think.
Yes.
Of the Postgres interface. Where was this one? Postgres store. It implements. Right. Let me switch here. If we go. No, it's not going to be here. No, it must be on the server. Postgres store here implements storage and storage. So that's for this one then. Feed line 48.
Okay, yeah, let me switch to where I'm. Okay. All right. So, yes. Yeah, so feed. Yeah, that's right. So feed executes a single feed from from the point of that bookmark. Um, I think part of the interesting thing, has been in generating that feed data structure. Um, yeah, that's having them as two separate code bases allowed me to choose where the theme was, and in the case of feed, I wanted the core library to do a whole bunch of work for me, and then just give me, here's the feed that I'm looking for. So it's already gone down different branches of the specification, and picked out multiple feeds and said, okay, yeah, give me this one, and then give me this one. So yeah, that's you'll find is walking through all of the different unknowns within that feed and producing joins, and then just giving you back a set of hashes or fact not even the full fact reference, just the hashes, because you presumably already know the types.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, I was always wondering that first sentence. Why? Um, this one we had. .NET. What version were we running on? Because we were still running on the core, the .NET standard library, and I think like graphics on .NET 5, I think. Yeah. Would you like to update to .NET 7?
I think 6 is probably a good place to be, because that's the long-term support. Thinking about this as a library, I want people who are still on 6 to be able to use it. But yeah, it probably makes sense to upgrade off of 5.
Mm-hmm. And the core library, we stay on .NET Standard?
That makes it as accessible, as reusable as possible. So yeah, which does get in the way a little bit when I don't have access to the latest C# language features and that kind of thing. But I think that's worth the inconvenience in order to make it broadly accessible.
Oh, it already has a lot more features than VB.NET from long ago, from 2002.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So, that
Yeah.
one we had. How to the translation of the union time we also did last time. The projections we also had. Yeah. I think we had all of them. Yeah, okay. No more questions for the moment.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I can show a little bit about the refactoring that I'm currently doing in Jinaga.JS to kind of flatten things out. I don't know that it's going to immediately impact the research you're doing, but because you get past this part pretty quickly when you're starting to step into the Postgres implementation of the store. But yeah, it's something that has been kind of bugging me, and now I've got a good excuse for doing it. So
last time we talked about the different projections. and so we decided not to use the projections in Jinaga directly in the provider for SQLite. So I just copied all the elements that I needed in the own data structure, and that's working fine. But I saw that there are still some other structures from Jinaga which I'm using. I don't remember by heart which exactly, but so it will not be completely independent. We might copy everything in and make it just that's something we can see afterwards once it's up and running.
Okay.
Do we want to encapsulate it completely, or do we keep using data structures from the Jinaga core?
Yeah, I think it's probably okay to keep using some data structures from Jinaga core. Yeah, yeah. To really dig in and make an informed decision, would want to kind of evaluate the seam. So yeah, which parts are things that we can rely on, that we know are going to be dependable, and which parts are things that we expect might change. Yeah, in fact, as we walk through this, we might. So that's those data structures are the .NET data structures. So yeah, this might not help us out there. I don't know. Let's see where we go. All right. So kind of starting with what is it that I'm trying to accomplish here in Jinaga.JS? Previously, we had a series of components that were all kind of strung together. So, in fact, I've got, I don't know why I didn't pull this up to begin with. Let's see if I can get this in. It is in app. Oh, what is this thing called? Lucid.app. That's it. Okay. Yeah, so kind of mapped it out to begin working through things. So there was a storage interface, which you're familiar with. In fact, you were just showing the storage interface. And that is implemented in 3 different ways in Jinaga and Jinaga Server, both the JavaScript. So we've got the memory store, the index.db store for a Jinaga client that has some persistence, and then the Postgres store for the Jinaga server. There's also an implementation called cache, but it doesn't do anything. It was supposed to be a way to keep you from having to hit the Postgres stores quite so frequently, but that's probably just going to go away. And then observable source was an interface that extended storage and added a few more capabilities, and it had only one implementation, observable source implementation. And then on top of that, we had fork. So fork was an observable source that had some additional capabilities that would be a transient for its additional capabilities were that it was a way where your query or you're introducing a fact forked and went down one path to get to the store and down another path to get to the server. So transient fork is one where it knows that the store that it's talking to doesn't have any persistent storage. Persistent fork, that's where it knows the store does have persistent storage. And so it used a queue to, which was a persistent queue, to anytime you saved a fact, it would go into the queue, and then persistent fork would say, okay, I'm done with that. Whereas transient fork would have to make sure that it got all the way to the server before it would complete the promise. Both of these used the web client, versus pass-through fork was when it knew it didn't have an upstream. So it's just like, yeah, just go ahead and pass everything through. And that was primarily for tests. And then on top of that, another interface
Michael, with pass-through fork, the data stays local.
It
doesn't
yes,
go...
yeah, it still passes through to the observable source that was injected into it. So this was also, you know, a decorator pattern and a pipeline. So each one of these is an interface that extends the one below, and the object takes an object of the one below. So so it yeah, in the case of fork, the one below represents the local storage. So pass-through fork just passed everything on through to the local storage. And then authorization builds on top of fork, and it adds the ability to look things up in the key store, so that it can authorize facts based on the authorization rules and who created those facts in the first place, or who signed those facts, really. And so authorization key store is based on the Postgres key store, and then authorization no op just passes on through to the underlying fork. Authentication is actually a different interface, so it doesn't extend authorization, but it had it had the same capabilities as authorization, but just more parameters. So so it basically, there were parameters indicating who was logged on, and then it would perform, you know, different authorization checks, like so if I'm or authentication checks. So if I'm on this particular device, then it's okay. I need to give you the fact ID, or the user, the Jinaga user that represents the device that you're on, versus web client, the Jinaga user that represents the person who's logged in. Then you've got offline, which kind of caches that identity, and then no op. So so having this tower of decorators was making it such that each one of these had all of the functions of the ones before, and most of them just did a pass-through. It's only the ones that actually needed to change behavior that did an override. And that got kind of cumbersome, and I had to kind of shoehorn ideas into a shape that was defined earlier on. So pretty hard to see an overall, once I built a pipeline in a certain way, how it's going to, you know, how the different pieces of the pipeline would interact. So it started to get cumbersome. So I switched that to a fact manager, similar to what I started doing in Jinaga.net. So I was basically, I'd solved the problem in Jinaga.net. So I said, how do I translate that solution back up to Jinaga.js so that I could have some consistency between the two and keep my sanity? So so now if you take a look at fork, for example, wait a minute. Am I looking at the right version of the code? Because it looks like this extends observable source, but it shouldn't. Interesting. This is Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm not on Jinaga server. This is... Oh, wait a minute. I should not be on the main branch. I want to be on... No, I'm on transient fork read. Okay.
Ja, Jinaga, not on Jinaga server.
Yeah. Maybe I might have some additional changes on my laptop that have not yet pushed, but yeah, this is what it used to be. Is every single one of these extended the one below it, and so what I'm going for in this code, or what I actually have accomplished in the code that's on my laptop, is that it no longer extends. But at least here I can show you the direction that I'm coming from. Okay, so we've got the storage interface, which we just looked at. So you were just asking about the feed, and then observable source, which used to be an interface. Now it's going to be a class, because there's only one implementation that makes sense. That used to extend storage. Now it just stands on its own and adds, and it just has these capabilities. And then fork will then just stand on its own, add these capabilities. I think I needed to add just a little bit more, because there were some things that were happening inside of these that needed to be exposed to the fact manager for it to be able to have these things interoperate. And so that gets us up that far. And then authorization. So we've got our authorization. Okay, so far in this code I had... Okay, yeah, this is where it changes shape. Yeah, so now we say, okay, what's the user identity as we do all of these different things? So it doesn't inherit from below anymore. And then authentication. Yeah, again, that does not inherit from below, because when you're using authentication, this is where you actually figure out who the user is, and then it tells that one level down, okay, here's the user identity. Keep moving forward with it. So yeah, these break the decorator pattern, but yeah, further on down we've got decorators all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that these were put together, if we take a look at Jinaga browser, for example. So as a user, you say, I want to do JinagaBrowser.create, and I give you a browser config. Well, this is going to create a store based on that config, and then an observable source pointing to that store. Sync status notifier is a utility that we kind of put in there at the fork, and so the fork is looking at the observable source, which still has the name feed in this version of the code. That's an old name. And then on top of that fork, we create the okay, actually the authentication just goes down to the observable source. Oh, that's right. Yeah, so this is halfway through. I'd started to flatten it out and said, okay, now Fact Manager needs to take care of that relationship between authentication and the observable source. So yeah, this still has access to the observable source itself, but the authentication and the fork both talk to that same observable source. And so we're starting to get a little bit of the interaction happening here. So most of the time, this is just passing through to the correct thing, because I'm still, at this point in the code, in the process of unzipping things. So first of all, put them all in the same box, and then unzip them to make them interact appropriately. So like here, when saving, I authorize the facts, and then if everything passes, I save. So you can see that's the fact manager now understanding the responsibilities of each of the different pieces, rather than them taking that responsibility and then forwarding the rest. So that's the first bit of it, the first little tiny taste of it. But in the current version of the fact manager, there's a bit more interaction, because everything has been kind of split apart.
Okay. It will make it easier to understand the code.
Yeah.
Because now, if in the server, if you get into the entry point and you walk through, and you find all these different reads and forks, and
Yeah.
it's quite difficult to understand what's the meaning of it.
Yep. Yep. So you've got some cases here, like with persistent fork, it knows that there's a queue because this is the persistent one. So I'm going to queue it, and then I'm going to start up a kind of a background thread, if you will, to send from that queue. And then I'm also going to save it to the observable source that is passed into it. So this is the inner storage. So it's okay, store it on the queue, store it on the source, kick things off, and then you can say, yep, I actually saved it. It's not sent to the server yet. Versus transient fork, save, just talks directly to the web client and calls save on the web client, waits for that to finish. So it says, okay, and know that it actually made it to the client. And then, yeah, I'll go ahead and save it locally. And now I know that it's been saved. So different implementations, because it knew that you were transient versus persistent. So that's the knowledge that it should have. But then there's all this stuff like this, like, feed, which exists. Yeah, I don't do anything with that. I'll just kind of pass it on through. Add specification listener, that's not my responsibility. So yeah, you're kind of looking at some things that are just passed through, some things that are just doing a little bit, like this one, and some things that are the true responsibility of the class, like one that we were just looking at. Yeah, save. That's the true responsibility of the class. And then because of this decorator pattern, there was a lot of duplication. So here's query for transient fork. The query for the persistent fork looks very similar, except that it's doing a bit of, on error it's still, on error it is trying to just return the local results. So it knows, okay, there's local persistence, so that's what I'm intended to do, is just give you the local results. Versus transient, there's no local persistence, so I'm going to actually give the user the error. But yeah, you can see a lot of that is the same, and then just a little bit is different. So the seam was in the wrong place, but it had to be in this place because query was already defined in a previous interface. So yeah, it just prevented me from doing the things that I needed to do.
Yeah, little by little, the code is getting better.
Yep. Yeah. What I'm most excited about is the number of red lines that I see. So it's
Not
there's a lot
implemented.
of deletion that's happening.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I like deleting code.
Mm. If it can be simpler, why not?
Mm-hmm. All right. So, yep. Hopefully by next week, I'll be able to show the completed um, refactoring in there, and also carry that refactoring into Jinaga server. And the reason that I'm doing that is so that I can have a Jinaga.JS that talks to the replicator using the new specification language, and and uh, and reading in the feeds. So I've got that implemented in Jinaga.net. So now let's do that in Jinaga.js.
Yeah, yeah, and I hope that I can finally finish at least for the very simple specifications, the
Mm-hmm.
implementation in .NET, and then start on the more difficult ones.
Yeah.
It's becoming a very long project, but yeah, at least it helps me understand the code and it helps me learning the language on another level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's important too.
Yep. Yep. I think so.
Okay,
All right.
let's.
So,
I think for this afternoon I can still work a little bit.
mm-hmm.
There's nothing urgent in the pipeline now, so I'm gonna do that.
Very good.
Good. Next week, Michael.
Yes. Next week.
Okay. See you next week.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
See you then.
Bye bye.
Bye.